Okay, welcome. It is Tuesday, June 10th, and this is our Governance and Priorities Committee meeting. It's 1 o'clock, and I will call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is adoption of the agenda. So we have an agenda in front of us. Does anyone have anything they need to add or change to the agenda? If not, we're just looking for Councillor Shippold.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I also move the agenda as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Call it to a vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. We're looking at no delegations, so we're going to move on to the minutes. We have the minutes of May 13th, and they were actually emailed to us yesterday, and they're up there as well. Is there any errors, omissions, anything that needs to be modified on the minutes? Not, Councillor Musker.
Yes, thank you. I move that we accept the minutes of the Governance Priority Committee meeting from May 13th, 2025.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. We have, moving on to 6.1, the land use amending bylaw. And I'll pass that over to Renee.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm just going to connect this to my computer so you guys we can go through it together. So it's our second presentation on the proposed amendments to the land use bylaw to GPC. I'm looking for council's feedback as to whether you'd like to go through each point separately or if we can just cover the items that you were looking for some clarification on.
I think probably the items we're looking for clarification on. Is that acceptable for council? Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yep. All right, thank you. So I guess the first point would be under section 3.2.29. There was reference to council was wanting some clarification on this section, and that was in reference to the soft-sided buildings on some of the core commercial and other districts. And so I kind of reworded it a little bit. Just let me get to that. So what I did was under the 3.2.29, I just added a new definition basically. So I went into our definitions and changed the definition for what used to be an accessory building, and I just changed it to soft-sided building and just added that, included that portion that talked about that can be rolled or folded allowed in a residential district, so that there's no allowance for soft-sided buildings. So one of the things that I did put in the report is whether council wants to discuss the allowance of soft-sided buildings in the residential districts. There's some pros and cons that I listed, like it is more affordable. We do get inquiries and we do some enforcement on soft-sided sheds. Some of the pros are listed, some of the cons are listed. Ultimately, the issue with the soft-sided sheds is that they don't comply with building code requirements, and so there is some potential for those to collapse because of snow loads. Most people do not set them up and then take them down, in October before the snow flies. So there is potential for liability if the town were to allow them. Then, you're walking a little bit of a line in terms of liability if something were to happen. The other thing is that the soft-sided sheds do tend to crack because of the weather here. I think it talks about durability, but that's durability by California standards maybe, not by Canadian standards. And so when you get that minus 30 or minus 40 weather, those soft-sided structures can crack, and then they deteriorate very quickly. They start to, you know, pieces of it flies around, becomes garbage, and, you know, talking with other municipalities, there's very, you know, I only phoned a few in the short timeline, but most municipalities don't allow them as a permitted or discretionary use. But they also don't enforce if somebody were to put them up unless a complaint came in, and that's kind of, like, we don't have them allowed. When people come in, you know, we say if a complaint comes in that we would have to send a letter and ask them to remove it, so.
Counselor Ald.
So just so I'm clear, would that include the carports that you buy at Costco that everybody has in their yard?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough, because that's a pretty easy fix for a lot of people, having those carports. I would like to see them be allowed, and then if it turns into an eyesore or an issue, then we use our community standards bylaw to deal with them. Could we do, like, is that an option?
Well, one of the things by allowing them, then the municipality says they're okay to have. So under our regulations, anything that would be big enough for a vehicle to park under would require a development and building permit, and we would not be able to issue a building permit for a soft-sided structure unless it complied, like they'd have to get them engineered and stamped by an Alberta engineer, and they may be hard pressed to have an engineer sign off on something that, you know, that they sell at Canadian Tire, for example.
Just a comment, Renee, I'm not sure if, I think we're limiting them to 108 square feet.
For development and building permits, one of the changes we did make in the land use bylaw is that we do not require permits for anything. What we did is we increased the size for development permitting to align with building permitting. We found that it was a red tape, really, to ask for a development permit when they don't require a building permit until they're 108 square feet.
But I think with the soft sided, we're only going as big as 108. We weren't going into the garage sizes. They weren't allowed.
Yeah, and I think if we were
Only
to.
up to 108 square feet. It is what we're proposing. Yeah.
So, and I don't think that we would need to, the issue when the town lists it as a permitted use, if something were to happen, you know, there could be liability attached to that, even if it's under the 108 square feet, if we have it listed.
Counselor Shipple and then Counselor Capero.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I agree with what you're proposing. I think we leave it status quo, work on a complaint basis. If they put them up, they put them up. And then if something happens, we have the ability to look after having them removed, or if they become nasty in appearance, that we have that ability to go knock on their door. My theory or my thought would just leave it as is and leave us the options to do what, work on a complaint basis. So I appreciate your, in the proposal to leave it as is. So I would support that.
Okay, Counselor Capero.
Thank you. Just a question, does that also include like soft-sided greenhouses?
That would be a soft-sided structure as well, so, and again, it's, anything that can be rolled or folded, so that would align with the same regulations.
Okay.
So, and again, it would be if somebody put it up, we would respond only on a complaint basis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other discussions or comments on this one point? Are we okay to move on then?
Okay, thank you. Three point three, or sorry, 3.4.3 and 4, and that was regarding the highway commercial and core commercial districts and the soft-sided buildings in those locations. So I just changed the wording a little bit to try and make it clearer to somebody reading the document. Really, I just said with the exception, I moved that to the front so that it provided clarity that seasonal greenhouses are not included in the regulations. And it just allows for a maximum of 30 days for a soft-sided building. And so that would be, again, like a storage tent of some sort that was brought on site. But seasonal greenhouses are unique and they do not require, there's no regulation in terms of limiting the amount of time on the site. Because seasonal greenhouses really would need to be in operation. You know, some may be as early as April till probably some would stay open even into October because of fall planting. So I wanted to move that to the front so that it's clear that it's an exception for seasonal greenhouses. 3.4.4, again, I moved it to the front that with the exception of seasonal greenhouses, soft-sided buildings are not allowed in the core commercial mixed use. And for the same reasons as soft-sided buildings not being allowed in other areas, so.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. What about a type of the tent-type structures that are used for outside welding, pipeworks, things like that?
So you're talking in an industrial district? Yeah, so they would be allowed in an industrial district. If they were over the 108 square feet, a soft-sided building would have to meet building code, so it would have to go through the development and building permit process. And typically, those are engineered type of buildings, and they submit the documentation to allow for a building permit inspection and approval, which would align with engineering requirements for those things.
Okay, not seeing any other discussion, so we can, go ahead and move on then.
So the next section was landscaping. So I thought that we probably should have another discussion regarding landscaping. I did include in the report some information regarding the pros and cons of landscaping, so I would like to go through that with you. The land use bylaw is a visioning document in a lot of regards because it kind of outlines how the municipality would like to see itself down the road. Landscaping is an integral part of that. And so, just looking for, I have listed pros and cons. One of the things that we use landscaping for is basically for screening between different uses. That's one of the things. So we might look for screening trees to be planted between an industrial or commercial district and a residential district. The other thing is when an access is created onto a property, sometimes we'll ask for landscaping to define where the access is. Otherwise, you get people driving over the curb and, using any portion of, going from that parcel onto a road. And we have seen this with some properties where, there's no defined access, and so people are driving over the curb, and that creates damage to the curb and also creates maybe some confusion when it comes to traffic issues, I did provide a couple of pictures as well. They're very small pictures, but it does give you a little bit of a visual cue for a property that doesn't have any landscaping versus one that does. One of the things in our land use bylaw regarding landscaping is that we are allowed to consider existing trees on a site when we're looking at doing a review of a new development permit. We don't, we typically don't drive around. We don't have a bylaw that, kind of says that has to be maintained. But our regulations, in my mind, should not be based on what people do not do or, you know, what they aren't going to fall through. It should be based on what we want to see the community do. It's kind of like speeding, you know, if everybody's speeding, you know, should we remove the regulation for the speed limit, or should we still have a speed limit? So, you know, we can ask, we do have enforcement through the community standards bylaw. If something is really poorly kept, then we can enforce on that. And I see Councillor Shipple has a question through Acting Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So I hear you. So when you talk about the need for landscaping, and you talk about defining driveways and stuff like that, it doesn't say that in our land use bylaw. It doesn't say you have to have trees to, you know, define driveways or whatever. This is a hope, not a bylaw requirement. So although it would be nice if it was black and white in there, then I would agree with you, but when there's a hope, nothing forces that developer to put it there. You can ask, but it doesn't have to happen because it's not in a bylaw. So the picture that you've painted isn't necessarily going to be the outcome of what you want. So that's the first comment I make to that. The second comment I have about the landscaping is, yes, I agree that there's a vision up front, but our bylaw does not go, and there's many businesses around town that once upon a time had flowers and all that kind of stuff who don't anymore, because we don't have anything in here for enforcement. We asked for 2 years where it has to live for 2 years, and then after that, it doesn't get maintained, doesn't get looked after, and often gets taken out due to the cost of that. So yes, that'd be our vision, but we impose a cost to our developers to put this in place, which in 2 years may not be as it was on the day one when that was put in place. So the question I have is, yes, this could be a vision for our town, but if we don't impose it for 10 years down the road, and I can go through and name businesses that don't even have a blade of grass left on there, that over the period of time they've taken it out. So yeah, day one it looks perfect, and we even take a deposit from those people and saying, yeah, it's got to live for 2 years, you get your money back, and then you don't have to worry anymore. I don't even know why we take a deposit, why we even do that on commercial properties or industrial properties or any properties. Residential, yes, makes sense. But I think the conversation at our last meeting was, isn't the necessity, this talks about how many trees you need per square feet of landscaping. 2 years from now, there could be no trees in that area. So yes, up front, are we asking for something that at the end of the day gives us nothing down the road? I appreciate the fact up front it looks pretty, but in year 3, there's a real remote chance, because I know we've had trees that grow, and guess what comes out? The power saw. Main Street is a perfect example that I said last time. Those trees grow, and then after a while, what do you do with them? You know, our own town office here, our parking lot should have trees next to the residential. We don't. There's things that we do as a community. We can't anticipate or expect developers to do the same. Some developers who care will put it in place. Some don't. So I just question where you're going with your thought processes, because I think at the end of the day, there's a variance in what we're going to get.
Well, you know, there's my thought process, which is different than the land use bylaw. So that, you know, I'm giving you information as to the reasoning for landscaping. And so, like, I certainly have my own opinion, but what I've presented here is based on the land use bylaw. And so the land use bylaw, talking to other municipalities, landscaping has been an important part of the development permit process. You know, if the concern is people not maintaining it, then there is the community standards bylaw, and there's always the option, I guess, to write something into the bylaw that would allow the municipality to enforce when landscaping is not maintained. You know, that's an option, but it depends on what your vision is, because, you know, as council, you're the ones who determine what you want to see the municipality as down the road. I will leave that to you to have a discussion, and we will take the direction from council as to how you would like us to go forward. I think I've provided the information as to the pros and cons and the reasoning for some of the landscaping. You know, really, from there, it really is council's decision as to, you know, how you would like to proceed.
Okay, Counselor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'm not saying no landscaping, I'm just saying we got overkill on our landscaping in our bylaw right now.
Okay.
And my anticipation was we were gonna see a reduced requirement in the rewrite that was gonna come before us today. And it's exactly the same as it was last time. There was no changes to it other than the color of the print.
Yeah, no, there was
Um,
no,
So I look at that and I go, after the discussion last week, because, I mean, we're at a point of no return at this, because there's so many businesses. I mean, I can name a dozen off the top of my head, you know, that don't have a blade of grass, that have totally concreted, they remove the costs. So to go back on them and have a new development come in and say, well, you gotta do all this, but your neighbor, no, he's okay. I don't think that's fair. So that's where I'm at on this. I just think it needs to be rewrote. I mean, we start talking about trees and bushes and shrubs and the caliper and how many you have to have.
so is it, you'd like a reduction as well as like maybe reducing the minimum caliper requirement? That kind of thing, or I think I'm looking for a bit of clarity in terms of like what you would like to see changed in the regulation, and you know, I can certainly draft something, but I want to make sure that I'm drafting it to what council would like to see, and so that includes maybe a bit of clarity in terms of, you know, what you would like to see in terms of the reduction, you know, a bit of clarity, like, does caliper matter to council on a tree? Does the size of a shrub matter? You know, that kind of information, I guess, would be helpful.
Through the acting mayor to Councillor Shipple. So ideally in section 3, do you want A to G to disappear?
Yes.
Okay. And then points 4 to 7, are we satisfied with what's in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like 4 to 7 are basically making sure that we have grass and it
So-
looks reasonable.
So with the grass end, are we taking securities for grass? Because that grass can die too. I'm just throwing that out, like as far as, you know, someone plants grass, it's dead a year from now from not watering. So,
So we don't take sureties if I'm building a new building for what the exterior is gonna look like. I can say it's gonna be stucco and I can put wood board on it or whatever, and you can approve stucco and it could be a different exterior. We don't take securities on a lot of stuff, but we take it on landscaping. What's more important, the building or the landscaping? Must be the landscaping, because we take security on it to make sure it happens. So, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Just to respond to Councillor Shipple through
Yep.
Acting Mayor Phillips. So building has to comply with building code. And so they do provide drawings, and so we don't take a security because essentially their building permit would not receive approval and they wouldn't be able to occupy the building without them complying with range.
I'm talking about aesthetics.
Yes, so aesthetics, you know, it's, you know, I guess, I mean, again, this is on council's, what council wants to see, so.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was
Mr.
just
Schwader.
going to say to Councillor Shipple through the acting mayor, so section 4 talks about grass then. Should we eliminate grass or still keep it in there and just, so we're,
I think you nailed it with section 3A to G. I just think it needs to be reduced in what we do. I mean, anybody who builds a new building and they look at this landscaping a lot, and to Councillor Moosfer made a comment to me prior to the meeting about, oh, you look like you got lots of trees and looks good. That was done to the bylaw,
Mr.
but how many aren't, you know, so.
Mr. Kroos has something to add.
Yeah, no, thank you, Acting Mayor. So I think what administration will do, we're going to come back with council with an objective-based type of revision to this, where we're trying to meet the goals of council, but perhaps on the objective base, here's the goals of council, provide us with a landscaping plan that meets these objectives. And then it's up to the developer to present that. So that way we're getting away from calipers and grass and whatever, because it could be xeriscaping too. So we'll bring that back to council to see if council finds that amicable.
Or is council okay with that? Bringing it back? Councillor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yes, that's what I was hoping. So,
Okay. Any other comments on this one, or we're okay to move on to the next point? Yep, we can move on then.
Okay.
Oh, Councillor Shipple, sorry.
so I just got a question to kind of back up to 3.7, 0 lot lines under that heading. Just under 3.71 sub 1. And when it talks about 4.9 feet maintenance, just a question for clarification. The fire code says 4 feet. A lot of the new homes are 4 feet from property line. We're saying that the neighbor has to give 4.9. I just wonder if 4.9 is the incorrect number, if it should be 4 feet according to the fire code versus this, because likely the fire code, a lot of the new house builds in town are at the 4 foot mark from property line. So I just question whether that number is correct or not, or if it should be changed, could be changed. I don't know. I just throw that out there.
Sure, I can look into that for the next, for our next presentation. So 3.7. I can check with fire and with building on that.
So what this clause is going at to is allowing 0 lot line. So one property can be built right on property line, but the next building over would have to be like 8 feet to meet building code. Because there still has to be that separation between buildings. So what this is saying, that the owner who has their property adjacent to the 0 lot line property provides an easement so that property owner can go out and walk onto his property to wash windows and maintain the building that's on the 0 lot line. Oh,
Sorry. Not sure what's going on there. I understand that. I just wonder, because typically your next door neighbor in a residential area could be 4 feet from the property line.
well, that's when the building code would kick in. They still need that spatial distance between the two structures. So 0 lot line is, you build on this lot line, your next property over has to give that spatial distance between the two buildings for fire regulations, for fire code, but you can build on that side of your property for 0 lot line. It's really just pushing everything over.
I hear you. But our bylaw says 4.9. So is our bylaw over?
And that's just a maintenance access. It's not the spatial difference between the two buildings.
I'm just thinking it's conflicting, but if it's not, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so we're good to move on then.
Okay. Section 3.14 was just to provide some clarity on drainage. And so I just included in the report that under the town's design guidelines, the stormwater management plan is required for anything larger than 3 hectares, which is equal to 7.413 acres. And that was, council was just looking for a bit of clarity when we require a stormwater management facility.
Councillor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So I'm just wondering about that size of land. 7 acres is a large piece of land.
Yeah.
That could have basically 30 houses on it. And no stormwater retention or stormwater plan for that. In our bylaw, it doesn't talk anything about stormwater retention plans in this section. And I'm just wondering if it should somehow talk about stormwater plans.
We could add a reference that any stormwater plan needs to comply with the town's design guidelines. we could just do a cross-reference so that it would take them to the town's design guidelines for reference. But typically that's done when there's like a, there's a subdivision that's created, and through that subdivision, that's where we look at the larger parcels, and that's where it's determined that any subdivision that's over that area and size is required to install, or have some sort of stormwater management plan in place. And so the lots, from that, they create separate lots, and those lots typically are not that size, but there's a plan that's registered with that subdivision. So if you have, 10 or 15 lots, for example, and they're residential lots, and they've been developed on a parcel that is over the 7 acres, as part of that, the plan would include not only maybe a stormwater management facility, like a pond, but it would also require like a grading when those lots are created, to ensure that that on each lot, there's like an elevation on the 4 corners that would bring the grading and direct the water to that pond or to the stormwater management system of the town. So it's kind of, it's a larger plan that applies to all the little lots that are created under that plan, if that makes sense.
It does. The second part of my question is, how did we come up with 4 hectares or 7.3 acres is to be the deciding line? Anything beneath that doesn't have to have a stormwater management plan. Anything above that has. I think 7 acres seems like a substantial area. How did we determine that number? Where did that come from?
I think that probably would have been done with engineers.
Yeah, it was done by Urban Systems that we contracted when the design guidelines were created. So, and I'm not sure, Councilor Schippold, this may be a question for engineering and ops to answer. Because that's who looks after, like, once we get the plans in, we forward the plans to engineering and ops, and they review them in regards to what's required for stormwater.
Would it be possible to get an opinion from them as to how they feel about,
About the size of the
about 7.3
stormwater
acres.
management facility?
yeah, if it should be smaller? I just wonder. Because you can get a lot of water. If you got a 7-acre parcel of land with asphalt on it and it rains, there's a lot of water coming off of that piece of asphalt.
Sure, and I can
And where's it gonna go?
certainly-
I think the town was once in a lawsuit over water coming onto someone else's property. I don't think we need to go there again. I just want to be cautious when we come to this, so.
I can look into that for you for sure.
Okay, Councillor Musker?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. If I may, I'd like to get back to the landscaping items and make some comments. I'm not in favor of abandoning the tree requirements altogether. And if we're going to replace that, or we're considering replacing it with grass or sod, from my perspective, that takes far more effort to maintain than a tree planting or shrubs. You got to mow it, you got to spray it for weeds, whatever. It's just, I take care of my lawn. Maybe some other people here do too. It's a lot of work. I also want to thank Ms. Hardling for providing the 2 pictures in the report, because I know which one I prefer to look at, and I also know which one I would prefer to visit, the one with vegetation, not the one that looks like a moonscape. So there's got to be a happy medium here. And so what I would like to see in there, not everything surrounding trees, but what about rocks, stonework, things like that. You can get some really nice landscape, visually attractive things with stonework. And so there's just some options there rather than just focusing on trees. But I don't want our urban landscape to be desolate, okay? Not just paved and concreted. So just take that into consideration when you're bringing back some options, okay? Thank you.
Councillor Musker through Acting Mayor Phillips, I will absolutely do that. I will look at some options, and that would be considered xeriscaping, is when you're bringing stone in. And so xeriscaping can include rock, but it can also include drought-resistant plants. So what we'll do is we'll revisit that. We'll try to write something in where, you know, taking out caliper requirements and maybe looking at the number of trees and shrubs that are in there. Maybe not just based on council's feedback, maybe doing something that might be more reasonable for council to consider. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we can move on then.
Okay. Mailboxes. So what I did is I just rewrote it, that kind of clarifies where the authority rests. And often Canada Post will consult with municipalities when they're putting in those community mailboxes. So I did kind of change the wording so it's clear where, you know, we are looking at new or amending addressing. Canada Post is responsible for mailbox assignment and consults with the municipalities in the location of any community mailboxes. So one of the things when we do a new development is we do assign addressing on this end, and we send a letter to Canada Post that gives them notice of that new address. That's for, even for a secondary suite, if a secondary suite is created, we assign a new address to that, send a notice to some of the agencies, which include Canada Post. And likewise, I think when Canada Post is looking at putting in a new mailbox, they will often talk to the municipality, like reach out and, you know, identify the proposed location for a community mailbox and kind of looks for our comments and feedback on that, so. Are there any questions on that?
Not seeing any questions, so yeah, go ahead and
Okay.
yeah, move on to the next one.
Three point 3.35 is the secants.
Councillor Shipple.
I'm sorry, before we get into secans, can I just back up to home occupations 3.25.7? And that's about a sign out front about no idling of a vehicle over 5 minutes permitted. I guess the question is,
Do we do
How-
anything with that?
how do we monitor, what do we do? Is it a mute subject? Is it in the right bylaw? Should that be in the traffic bylaw versus this bylaw? I just, how'd you police it? How'd you do it? I just go like, it's great to have it in there, but probably ask 10 people got a home occupation if they know about it, and they probably say no.
Through-
So I just go like, I just-
Through Acting Mayor Phillips to Councillor Shipple. I think the reason it's put in there is for home occupation where there's customers coming to the home, and if they're parked adjacent to another dwelling and their vehicle is idling, it can be, you know, the fumes can be aggravating to the adjacent resident. Or, so what it does is it allows a venue for complaints, I guess, for if somebody wants to, is not happy with it and they want to complain, there's a venue there for complaining. Like if we received a complaint on that, we would probably ask them to monitor it and give us dates and times of that occurring and how often it's occurring. And then we would work with our peace officers and probably, you know, responding and following up on something like that. But the reason I think that that's there is because if they have a number of customers coming to the house and everybody is idling their vehicles, it can be, the fumes can be, I guess, a nuisance, if not more.
Do you have something to add to that?
just to Mr. Kraus, is it in the right bylaw?
I mean, it could be placed in here so it's a condition of a development permit, but it would be enforced through a traffic bylaw. But it would be the more appropriate place, because that's where generally anti-idling requirements are placed. And I've got to note to check our traffic bylaw to see it's, even illegal to idle for over 5 minutes, so.
Thank
We
you.
will check into that.
Just, sorry, for some clarity, are we wanting to just check the bylaw to see that it's also put in the traffic bylaw, or are we wanting to remove it from here if we can enforce through the traffic bylaw? So- Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it's not my bylaw, it's council's,
Yeah,
so, to be honest with you, I'm questioning the validity of this section. A neighbor can start the car up in winter and let it sit for 15 minutes. So I think we have to review that administratively and come back to council.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
So section 3.35 C-cans. So we restrict C-cans in the residential district other than for temporary uses. In residential districts, C-cans are allowed as a permanent accessory building. And I believe this was presented previous where there was discussion regarding, like, it didn't make sense that they had to remove it after 3 years for a month and then apply again to put it back on after a month. So we just made it like a discretionary use for the different zoning, the non-residential zonings based on that. But one of the things that, you know, the question that this brings up is, and it's related to maybe tractor trailer discussion as well. We can talk about both of them at the same time. But whether council wants to consider putting a restriction on the percentage of the building, like whether the C-cans, the number of C-cans or should be allowed based on a percentage of the building space. So I know I watched through the last council meeting because I wasn't here, but one of the things was a discussion about a percentage of the size of the parcel versus a percentage of the size of the building. And so my recommendation would be to look at the size of the building if you're going to put restrictions like that in place, rather than the size of the parcel. Because if you give, for example, if you said 5% of a parcel and the building is 1,000 square feet, the principal building is 1,000 square feet, but 5% of the parcel allows you to put 1,500 square feet of C-cans on the property, then the principal is no longer the principal, it seems to me. The C-cans would be the principal because they encompass a larger amount of space. So if council wants to consider that, then I would make the recommendation that you look at a percentage of the principal building, a percentage of the principal building. The other thing that I put in my report, and it's not in the land use bylaw, as to whether council wanted to add a section that would address like tractor trailers on a parcel, and whether they want to consider the percentage of a tractor trailer that would be allowed on a non-residential parcel. And one of the things in the industrial district is you might see a large number of tractor trailers that are parked because, you know, that's kind of almost like outdoor storage, right? Where they're using those tractor trailers for transport or what other, you know, other things. And so I think it's to be maybe careful that you're not restricting a person's ability to do business on certain, you know, on certain uses, so.
Councillor Musker and then Councillor Sheffield.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Regarding the tractor trailers, I'm more concerned about the appearance than how many are there. I would guess that in the case of a business, having storage or warehousing in the building would be preferred to having tractor trailers outside, just because it's a pain in the neck. But that sometimes is all they have an option for. So if the appearance can be addressed in our community standards bylaw, I'm personally okay with the trailers.
And Councillor Schiffel.
Thank you. I agree with you, Councillor Musker. So back to this bylaw, we have it titled CCANs, and I'm not sure if we shouldn't be titling it portable storage units. Under definitions, and then in definitions outline CCANs, trailers, whatever it might be, because everybody has a different version of what portable storage is. In terms of addressing the quantity, I agree. We discussed at the last meeting about a percentage of either the lot size or the square footage of the building, and I totally agree with what you're saying. Let's go by the square footage of the building, and I do think there needs to be some control in place. And I also think they need to look decent. And often we say if you build a garage, your siding on your garage has to be the same color as your house. And I think in this case, if you have a CCAN next to your business, maybe it should be the same color as your business. I think that we need to have a look at that. I'm not against them by no means. What I'm against is seeing 10 or 15 in a commercial place. Industrial, I mean, there's such a mix match of everything in an industrial area. So if you're in industrial, I don't think it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. It's our highway commercial areas, and I look at the aesthetics of what's going on there, and I just think we need to tighten that up somewhat in the future as to what's going on. So,
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. Is there a way of putting the trailer-type storage units to have it as a discretionary use and to be something that can be coming back to council on a case-by-case basis to see if it's something that would be acceptable?
To answer Councillor Hutchinson through Mayor Phillips. So if we change the definition of CCAN to just portable storage units, I like that idea, because then we can look at various types of, I guess, temporary or portable kind of, storage types of buildings. I think the thing is that our development authority bylaw would send that back to us to look at unless we were to rewrite, I think, the subdivision and development authority bylaw to bring those types of applications back to council.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Old and then Councillor Schiffel.
Thank you. If we're going to go down the road of basing it off the building square footage, what is council's thoughts on the percentage of the building? I agree with using that, but we need to make sure that the percentage is something that's actually usable for the business. You have a 7,000 square foot building. If you say 10% of that could be CCANs, well, that's 700 square feet. That's 140 foot and 120 foot. So I think we need to, if we're going to go that road, we need to make it so it's actually beneficial to the businesses to be able to still use them. So I would throw 25% of the building just as a starting conversation.
And Councillor Schiffel.
thank you. So first, my first thought, and I'm going to go back to Councillor Rawls. So the other thing that we see happening is underneath these trailers, they become storage areas themselves, unsightly storage areas. So I don't know how we can address that in our bylaw. So it's not only a CCAN is typically on the ground, nothing underneath it, but the trailers that are around town all of a sudden have come up with secondary storage areas beneath them. And so I'm not sure if they have to be fenced or whatever. It would have to be so not unsightly. It seems like everyone I see has got stuff chucked underneath it. To Councillor All's point about what percentage of the floor space, I don't open it up to 25%. I think if your business is growing that much, maybe it's time to do an add-on. I like taxable things, so I think that we go to maybe 15%, 10 to 15%. I think that's adequate. If you got 1,000 square foot building, that allows you basically a couple of 40-foot CCANs. Good enough. Just 4. So on a 1,000 square foot building, if you had 10%, that'd give you 400. Okay. So maybe 20%. I'd sooner try to have them add on to their building than allowing them to keep adding C-cans or storage units to it, so.
I see Councillor Woosker is your light still on? Okay.
It sure is, yeah. Thank you. I'd also like to see us round up to the nearest 40-foot trailer length.
And Deputy Mayor, did I see your hand going?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not in disagreeance with that, but I would hate to have a business that is a viable business right now and the option to expand with brick and mortar isn't available, and then have us entirely lose a business because they need the storage to keep their business operating. And to be, I get what you're saying about aesthetics and whatnot, but I just would hate to see it limit businesses from growth and doing the business that they're doing. Putting too low a restriction on it.
Councillor Capero.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Hutchinson. I think the concern that I have as well, just when it comes to aesthetics, for businesses that have tractor trailers, I mean, sometimes they're rented versus owned, so they're limited on what they can do aesthetically to these units as well. But I agree in terms of business, if there just isn't the space or financially it doesn't make sense, they can't do an add-on. I would hate to see them limit the space that they can use as well.
Councillor Ald.
That was my whole train of thought. You can put in 2 or 3 C-cans and make them look really good. You can match the building, and you're into it for 10 grand versus $1.5 million to build a new building.
So I looking at this, there's a difference between a C-can and a tractor trailer, which I'm glad now will have different definitions, because a C-can can very easily be made to look like part of the building, or at least match the color and such. Whereas a tractor trailer, as Councillor Schipple had alluded to, can start to get stuff underneath it, and sometimes a tractor trailer isn't the best looking thing in the first place. So I like the 20%. I like to be able to have 20%, and maybe there's a way we can put in there 20%, and if more than 20% is needed, they can apply on as needed basis, because I would hate to see a business that needs this extra storage that isn't quite capable of doing it yet not be able to do that. So I'd like to see, I would like to see the 1 or 2 cases where they need more than 20% to be able to be addressed as well on a discretionary basis.
Acting Mayor, just in regards to numbers, let's just say take an existing building of 50,000. 20% is 10,000 square feet. That is roughly, 20 tractor trailers, because they're 483 square feet for 53 by 8 or 9 square feet. So that'd be, I'm just throwing a scenario out there that you're increasing the number that the issue is. So I'm just kind of throwing that out towards council.
Councillor Capero.
Thanks. Can it be written in a way that you're allowed whatever percentage up to an amount of, like, an actual number of C-cans? And then we don't have that issue of a ton of C-cans on a property. Like, maybe it says up to an amount of 10, or, like something along those lines, a reasonable amount.
And we also talk about screening and fencing and that. On a tractor trailer, screening probably won't really help in regards to a fence. There are fences you can only go 6'6" or whatever, so the top of the trailers are going to be seen. Ideally with possibly trees or whatever, you could block that trailer visually. Like, because just driving along the highway, some of the properties are lower than the highways in regards to looking into people's businesses' lots. say, that do have tractor trailers. So,
And Ms. Hartling, did you have?
Well, Your Worship, I was just going to mention that the aesthetics can be impacted by screening, which can include landscaping. So, I mean, I think we can still do some changes to the bylaw where we allow for some landscaping for the purpose of screening, while we minimize the requirement for landscaping for a new development. So, if that's kind of what I'm hearing from council, and so I just wanted to get some feedback as to if I'm hearing correctly on that, so.
I think you're hearing correctly.
Okay.
We want a business to be able to use a tractor trailer, we just
Yeah.
don't want it to have to be an eyesore.
Okay, and just for clarity as well, that you're wanting a separate definition for tractor trailers, or you want that included in the portable storage unit definition?
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
I would think there might be some gray areas there if we include, like, we could include it in this, or have one heading, but we would still have to have, I believe, subsections for C-cans, and then again, another subsection for trailers. Because I don't think that we can use the same, necessarily the same rules that we have listed here under C-cans for trailers, if that makes sense.
Okay, any other further discussion on this one, or we can have the rewrite and see what it looks like when it comes back? Okay, so we can move on to the next one.
Okay. Just in regards to, I think, the window signs, so we did include 100% of the window area of the primary building and 50% of a secondary building face. So just, if council is happy with that.
I'm seeing lots of nods, so yep, we're good with that.
Okay. I also tried to amend the area, or I added that the language about it being in good repair, that aesthetically appealing and in good repair as well to that. And then clarifying under section 9, the brownfield sites. So I provided some clarity in the report regarding why they're named in the bylaw. And so typically, brownfield sites, there's development restrictions because of the contamination. So that can impact a rezoning application as well as development regulations. And so it's made publicly available because people need to know that there may be additional restrictions on development and or a land use bylaw amendment on those particular sites.
Councillor Schiffel.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So the two sites that are listed under 9.4.32, and the next one beneath that are both contaminated sites, is that what they are?
Yeah, brownfield site, there's
Why
like,
do we list them by the legal address? Why don't we also put the municipal address in? Because to me, this means nothing. When I read through it, I go like, I have no idea where it's at, and I just wonder why we're not forthcoming with that kind of information.
yeah, typically, we use, like on the planning end and, planning and development, we do use legal descriptions often. But we certainly could put the municipal address or the civic address in there as well. And that's, if council would like us to do that, but it's totally fine, yeah. Okay. So we will add the civic address. And keep I would recommend you also keep the legal address
Yes.
because it's
Yeah, for sure.
something that's also.
So not seeing any other questions, so yeah, you can.
Okay,
yeah, move
so
on.
I have made some recommendations for like a resolution, but I just want, if council wants it to come back, because I think what we put in our report to come back to the June 17th, but we could come back to, when's the next GPC? July 2nd?
Do-
For the next GPC
Do
with
we don't have GPCs. in
No.
this. Yeah,
September,
September.
Oh,
July 2nd for first reading.
So, Mr. Kraus, just because I'm seeing some substantial changes here, should we delay first reading?
That's entirely up to council. If you want another session where we go through the changes before we present a bylaw, that's entirely up to council. You can either present it at a council meeting for further discussion, or council can establish a separate meeting date just specific to that, more like a workshop type of application.
Counselor Shipple.
Thank you. I do think that prior to doing first reading, we should probably have one more kick at the cat because we do have substantial changes. So I would recommend that we look at the first meeting in July and just add it to our council meeting. And we're here anyway, so another half-hour discussion to that meeting. That'd be my suggestion.
I'm seeing lots of nodding heads, so I think that's probably the solution that
Okay,
we'll go
so
with.
July 2nd?
Yeah. I agree. I think before we have a first reading, I think we just need to hammer out some of the final details here. Okay, so do we need a motion for that, Mr. Kraus?
Yes, please.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to that effect? Counselor Hall.
I'll make the motion that we bring back the LEB amending bylaw 2025-06 to the July 2nd meeting to go over changes.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank
That was
you.
some good discussion. And now we're going to move on to new business, the organics, and Ms. Button will be coming up to present.
I trust you're all well today. I am here with the answers to some of your questions arising from recent discussions you had with the food cycler representative in March regarding deploying their units or options for augmenting our organics diversion waste from the landfill. So there are three, I guess, different things before you today. So I would like to run through them all as standalone items, if that suits council.
Yep.
So the first one is town facilities, and is there an appetite to bring some of these food cycler type units into town facilities for public use or for staff use or internal use when we have catered events in our facilities? Certainly the Loosopit, there's potential there as well. Food Cycler would, because we are a municipality, would actually offer us that municipal discount that they had presented to council back in March. And so for a total of between $13,000, depending on how many we go with, we could outfit all of our facilities and the staff areas of our facilities, plus the Loosopit Community Center kitchen, and even the concession kitchen at the Rocky Regional Recreation Center. With those two would have more robust units, with those Canadian-made countertop composters, except with the exception of the two being the larger capacity for the commercial kitchens. There are some certainly benefits to this. You want to be an environmental leader. It's right there in your strat plan, and there's that would definitely reduce the waste that leaves our facilities. When you have 100 people working for you, they do produce that compostable waste in terms of their lunches, plus any user groups using our facilities as well. So there is that option for council to consider. Minimal impact to the organization on this. They're really plug and play. You put them on the counter in the break room, the staff kitchen, and away you go. Parks would engineering and ops staff do the rounds of all the facilities a couple of times a month to collect recycling. They could also pick up this soil amendment and use it in the landscaping. If we're just looking at like staff level quantities, it wouldn't actually be very much material that they would have to manage. So that's the first one. The second one,
Sorry, before you go on, I just see
Oh.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson has a question.
Thank you. So you've got listed under financial, and it says 8,300 total plus shipping, or 14,300.
Okay, so-
That's sounding to me like there's like $6,000 in shipping.
no, forgive me, I
Okay.
could have been more clear. That is depending on if we do one or two of the 75-liter units to outfit both the Lusopit and the concession kitchen. That is the difference.
Makes more sense.
Okay. I should have caught that myself. Thank you.
Councillor Shipple has a question.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So Amperingham was so kind to sponsor a second ice surface, or one of our ice surfaces at the arena. Have we thought about talking to them about picking up bins, and we put recycle bins at all the town facilities and have them added to our overall program for the community? I don't see that costing us $13,000 with Amperingham coming in, picking up bins at town facilities, and we can maybe add cardboard and all the recyclables that we're doing, not just specific ones. And if we want to take it to the top shelf, then let's take it to the top shelf
Sure.
and go that route. And I'm just wondering if you have a cost comparison to Amperingham maybe picking up the town facilities versus this program.
I do not have a cost comparison. What does it pick up? $4 a week?
So for recycling, like the paper, the cardboard, the plastics, that already occurs in our town facilities. So this is really focused on organics, which we don't provide in any of our town facilities.
That'd be the green bin.
Yeah.
So could we if we're doing that already, could we not add green bin to the town ones?
I think we'd have to look at that, because the green bin has to stay outside.
Yeah. We would have to look at that. In fact, I spoke with our hauler to ask about what they have seen in other municipalities for the next part of the discussion, which is about multifamily properties. So these are your apartments and condos. And he said, easiest would be to just deploy some of the bins that you already have, and we'll add them to the collection route. So while there may be some logistics to be worked out, I think it is certainly worth exploring if council wants to go that route, for sure.
So how about we can do the presentation, and then we can come back
Then
with
you-
discussion after.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in multifamily homes, apartment buildings are served by private commercial waste management contracts. That is part of your waste management bylaw. And the town, we don't provide service to multifamily units, so it would be a significant investment to implement and require bylaw amendments. I did spend some time with the Edmonton program because they are just rolling it out. They're taking 4 years to roll it out across the city. They have some really great resources, but they also are putting quite a bit of responsibility on the property owners and managers to own those buildings. And the town has not been involved in serving these buildings for a long, long time, if ever. So the infrastructure is not in place for us to just start. So that would have to be a real coordinated effort, targeted effort, at council's direction to do that. Could do a pilot program with 2 or 3 of those big 240-liter carts at some of the smaller apartment buildings. That would be relatively easy to implement, provided the access is there for the trucks and all that, which I'm sure it is because they have pickup already. And then monitor the contamination rates in there, and see what the feedback is from residents. There are some additional costs there. Is it the municipality that would be providing the kitchen counter bins? We didn't do that for any of our other residences. So that's a consideration and an expense that council would have to decide on. Although there's a lot of upfront work to implement a pilot program and then possibly roll it out, that one is, I could see that becoming part of the regular organics communication campaign cycle, etc., once it's up and running. But it would take quite a bit to get up and running. And legislatively, there's nothing in our bylaws that would allow for us to go and do it, or legislate that property owners participate. So that would be something council would have to be willing to put into their waste management bylaw. And we went through that in January with regards to commercial properties, and council opted to not go down that road. It's not insurmountable by any means, but it is a consideration for you all. The third one, also arising from your March presentation from Food Cycler, was what we could, if there's anything we could offer our commercial enterprises with regards to commercial organics. Once again, as council reviewed in January, there's no, legislative impetus here in Rocky Mountain House for businesses to divert their waste or for the municipality to provide that service. Again, not insurmountable. You can put that in a bylaw if you want, following the legislative process. But there's also nothing that would prevent a commercial entity who wanted to install any of these things or contract this service from doing it themselves. And council also heard from that back in January. Once again, speaking with service providers, they say nobody's asked for it, but there is a lot of volume there that comes out of commercial establishments, especially ones that do food. There is a lot of volume that could be diverted. So if council wanted to participate in helping those businesses divert more of their materials, there's a few things you could consider. Back to the Food Cycler thing, the plug and play items, 6,000 up front. That one doesn't require anything more than an outlet, or the $28,000 ones. They need to be plumbed in and all of that. If this is something council wants to encourage the business community to look at, I mean, you've got the stick and the carrot, of course, the legislation, or maybe a rebate program, for example. So that is something you could consider if you wanted to encourage that. The existing bylaw doesn't allow for commercial waste to be received at the Eco Center. So they can use it for the diversion programs, of course, but there is no receptacle for food waste up at the Eco Center. And then there's the logistics of collection and transportation. Do you want to bring your kitchen pail full of sloppy plate scrapings across town to the Eco Center? I mean, that curbside organics collection is why we have such great success in Rocky Mountain House with the Green Bin program. It's why our contamination rate is 1% in those green bins. It's really exceptional. And I think it's because it's a real short distance between the plate and the bin you have to put it in. So I'm not here with any easy answers for you all, but those are the items I have for your discussion and consideration.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. So what are we thinking as a council? What would we like to do or see or look at? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I think, you know, for the town facilities, I think I would like to see or explore the options if it's possible for our existing service provider to provide bins for town facilities. I'm not completely sold on the food cycling thing there, and for that amount of money, if we have a facility, you know, somebody that's picking up our organics right now, and if that could somehow be put into, have town facilities put into that equation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Musker.
Yes, thank you. My first question, Ms. Button, on operational comments, there's a note here for town facilities, the relatively small amount of soil amendment created by the food cyclers, less than 3 liters per week. Is that a typo? Or is it only 3 liters per week that we're anticipating?
It would not be very much because
Okay.
it reduces the volume so much,
Okay.
right? So if we produce 30 liters of food waste in a week, it would yield 3 liters of soil amendment.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is a very small amount.
And that's if we get full participation, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I have
The-
to agree with the comments from Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, that we look at something maybe that is of equivalent outcome, but at far less cost. And that's, I have other comments on some other things, but that's on the town facilities one.
Councillor Alt.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Hutchinson. I'd like to see if we could utilize the bins for town facilities. I know at the rec center, being open to the public, it's probably not gonna work, but at the public works yard, yeah, I just don't know how, we have, our residents all have our bins outside, and we just deal with it. So I don't know if it'd be any different at an actual town facility. I'd like to maybe explore that option, just due to the cost, what we're looking at there, just about $15,000, so.
Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I know we've been to different conferences and whatnot, and there's always that third bin in public facilities for organics. I don't know if that's something that we would want to explore to move to that next level. In our rec facility, Loosop, but I know there were a lot of washrooms that had, you know, their bin in the middle that was paper towel, you know, organics only. If that's a possibility that we could look into.
Was it a question? For me? We certainly can. We have had some operational things to overcome there, simply because our facilities are not residential, and that's the contract we have. But again, not insurmountable, but can't be implemented tomorrow. But if council wants to go down that route, then we can put some effort into that possibility.
Councillor Musker.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just regarding our organics program in general, you've given, this is a great presentation, by the way. Thank you for all the information. The background. So in 2019, to inform the waste reduction strategy, the audit found that of the residential waste that goes to landfill, 76% by weight and volume is either compostable or recyclable. In 2023, we did an audit again, and it said it found the residential garbage stream to consist of fewer organic materials at 47%. There's no mention of recyclables at that point,
Right.
because I think we had broken that out. right? In 2019, we just had garbage pickup,
Yeah,
right?
in 2023, we had our blue bins.
Right.
Or blue bags at that
So,
point.
just my perspective, I think we can, there's bigger gains to be made by improving the participation rate at our curbside collection than worrying about the 3 liters of compost at the town facility or trying to impose organics recycling on businesses. We just went through the landscaping thing, talking about is this a cost that we need to be imposing on businesses? Recycling their organic, if they don't want to do it, well, who are we, right? Like, I mean, yeah. So that's the other thing with there. I just think there's bigger gains to deal with our residential because we're not getting great participation. According to the information, almost half of the garbage in the black bin is still organic. Would that be correct?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a lot. Right.
I would
So-
love to do another waste audit to see how well our campaign last summer had some
Maybe
effect.
that's something we need to do. Let's see where we're at now, because we're 2 years later again, right? And as people get more familiar with it and the expectations and stuff, I would like to see us have another waste audit, see where we're at with organic diversion.
Mr. Kraus, did we not have another waste audit scheduled in the future? I believe we had discussion on that.
Hypothetically, but it was not included in the budget.
Okay.
So there's currently no commitment from the town
Yep.
or council to conduct another one. But I think I've said it here before that I do encourage it.
Councillor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I was under the same impression that we had said we were going to do
Yeah.
a waste audit, so I would be inclined to think we should do a waste audit. Like to know if we got accurate numbers or not, or if people are now getting more used to the way we do it, and that number may go up in percentage. So I'd be inclined to support the
down.
move to go forward with that.
So just, sorry, before we get to Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, is that something that we would need to make a motion on for the 2026 budget?
Unless you want it done this year,
Okay.
but then we'd have to, council would have to approve that expenditure.
I was gonna say without the cost, that would be hard to do.
High level, I'm thinking 15,000.
1,000 was the last one, so
Yeah.
up to 20,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thanks. So where my thoughts are going is bringing the entire presentation, what you had information today, to service level, to go forward on a plan with a waste audit, maybe some type of educational campaign or something going towards commercial and multifamily to see this could be their options. Is there a need in your building for having organic pickup? What service providers are possibly there to do that for them? Again, like we've talked earlier today, we don't want to throw it upon a multifamily unit and just say, hey, you guys need to participate in this, here you go. But then that would take it to one next level, whereas if there is the possibility of designing some type of rebate program, maybe for multifamily or for commercial. I just think that you've given us a lot of information, and I see where there could be a lot of positive going forward, but I think we need a bit of a plan to go forward.
And to elaborate on Deputy Mayor Hutchinson's comments, maybe that's something that the research could be done on bins for our existing facilities and what that costing would be, and that could be brought to the service level for discussion as well. Do we have any more discussion? Questions, comments? Councillor Auld.
I didn't think that trying to do a trial study, something like that included in our service level with the town facilities and try and get some feedback from some of the multi-family apartments. If it's something they'd like to participate in simply, like if we put in 1 or 2 bins at one apartment or 2 apartments, if we get some buy-in from them, and then, yeah, I think it could all be rolled into that service level discussion.
Councillor Busker.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Auld. If we can have the owners or managers of some multifamily units that agree to a pilot program, absolutely. We can get some good information from that.
Just for clarification, are you looking for that pilot program to start this year and have the results in time for service level? Is,
Personally, I would like that going into service level.
Councillor Auld.
Even if we can just have that conversation with them before then to see whether or not it's something they'd be willing to participate in. And we can, if they're all on board, and we could start it this year, but they may not be in favor of it, so.
I think it's like anything, it's what the costing would be to implement the program. That's gonna be the determination whether we have a lot of buy-in or a little buy-in.
I'd like to defer to my colleagues here with regards to what the legislative obligations would be, as we currently don't have a bylaw that would collect waste from a multifamily facility. So if
Yeah,
we're
no,
providing that
We wouldn't have
service.
to change the bylaw if it's a pilot program with
Okay.
1 or 2. I really don't know if we have ample time to actually run a pilot program for service level. Definitely time to engage to see if there's interest from the multifamily facilities, but to establish, because I mean, there's no discussions with the service provider, there's the supplying of the bins, what will work. So I think it needs a lot more thought before we try a pilot program, but definitely engage.
Councillor Busker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Yeah, we can just see if there's any interest, right? And then go from there after service level review. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
So we would be needing a motion to bring the, what was the title of this? Town Facility Commercial and Multifamily Organic Waste Diversion to service level. Sufficient?
So you are making that motion then?
Laura has feedback?
I have a question, which is, I've heard a lot with Councillor Musker, especially regarding focus on the residential. So I'm just looking for what direction the commercial would be to come back to service level, or are we leaving the commercial here and just focusing on the residential for service level? The whole report, okay. With the additional information that can be gathered.
That's good?
Okay, so you've got the motion then?
Yep.
Okay. Everyone's clear on that motion? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried.
Yeah, Acting Mayor, just a
Yes.
second motion for us to engage the multifamily units.
Councillor Auld.
I'll make that motion that administration reaches out to the multifamily residential groups and try and solicit some positive feedback.
Thank you for that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Does anyone
See you
need a
in
break?
November.
Thank you, Ms. Button. That was a great presentation. Does anyone need a break, or do we want to finish through our agenda? Take a break? Okay, we will take a quick Okay, we are back to our live stream, and we're moving on to correspondence for information. So we only have one item for correspondence for information. Is there any questions about that, or is, if not, we're just looking for a motion to accept his information? Councillor Shipp, did you have a question?
No, I so move
Okay.
the report, if that's okay. Also move acceptance of the Parkland Library Board 2024 audit findings as information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Discussion on that motion. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to activity and committee reports. The acting mayor's activity report. It was a very, very busy month. There was lots of various meetings and lots of things to go to, including FCM. That was towards the end of the month. My FCM report will be in June's package because it carried over into June. So, is there any questions on my report? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
What about your AJTMA event? How did that go?
Yes. That went very well. It was well attended. There was about 150 participants between Japanese delegates and municipalities. And it was the 45th year of Stony Plains twinning agreement with the province of Hokkaido. I just can't remember the name of the municipality, but it was their 45th anniversary, so they were quite excited about it, and it was a very well attended. The Premier of Hokkaido was actually in attendance, which is the equivalent of our Daniel Smith. So it was very well attended. Any other questions? Councillor Cabrero.
No questions. I'll just make a motion here to accept the acting mayor's activity and committee report for the month of May.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. And we'll go on to the council activity reports. Councillor Auld, do you have anything to highlight? No? Okay. Councillor Cabrero.
No, I think I'm good unless someone has questions. I guess the only thing I would say was that we did the business walk, and that was actually really nice to do, and we had good positive feedback from the ones that Councillor Auld and I had gone to. Yeah, it was good.
Okay. See no questions. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. A few of the things just to mention, the Unstoppable meetings we've been attending, the business and municipalities, the nonprofit, the business municipalities, we met again last night, and we're going to be looking at some in-person coaching from the Unstoppable team, just to get some direction on where we're going. The nonprofit group has been looking at possibly looking for interest on creating a community foundation. So we're talking about doing some type of a survey to go out to see if there's any interest from nonprofit groups to do that. The youth group hasn't met for a while, and neither is housing. Acting Mayor Phillips and I attended the forestry dinner with Alberta Forest Products and put that on. That was out at Shotts Lake. It was a great night and a beautiful location. Never been out there before, so it was nice to go out there and see. With our Community Events Committee, we're meeting on Thursday. So just a reminder, our Spring into Summer event will be happening on June 29th. That's a Sunday from 11 till 4. We have I think there's been quite a few posters put up around town, but we'll be starting to do an advertising campaign through the paper and hopefully get some radio coverage coming up to the event. And the business walk was great. We didn't get to all of the businesses that we intended to, so I'm hoping that with ECDEV we'll be looking at scheduling another date to finish up going to some. Sometimes you tend to talk just a little more than we're supposed to, so. And then, we also had coffee with Councillor at A&W. We had 3 people show up. Discussion was on disc golf and how that was progressing and where it was not going and going. Some conversation on the trail, new trail system that's being put in. Otherwise, we had, I think, pretty good conversation.
Okay, thank you for that report. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Musker. Anything to highlight?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. No, I leave my report as is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to Councillor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. My report as I've done. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, and I am not seeing any questions, so with the committee report, the activity and committee reports being presented, I will make a motion to accept item 10.2 as information. Any discussion on that motion? Call it to a vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Now we move on to the administration reports. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So they're presented to council if council has any questions. One I will add is we did do the pilot project of no parking limit on Main Street, which was to end at the end of May, which it has. We received 4 submissions through our complaint or online gathering. That was actually right at the beginning when we implemented it. 2 opposed and 2 for. So a 50-50 on the 4 residents or business owners that responded. Our engineering and operations department is not seeing any problems with the way it is right now with the no parking limit, and neither is our planning department. So we'll be keeping that as is.
Councillor Bald.
I'm just curious on the Protective Services Department, and maybe this is an admin inquiry, but has there, now that we've gone to 40 kilometers in the residential zones in town, is there gonna be, have we had any discussions about having additional police presence or CPO presence to try and enforce the speed limit? Is it gonna be, to start, did you know stops instead of tickets right off the bat, or is there kind of a campaign?
Well, there's definitely going to be a transition period. We're definitely not going to be out enforcing the 40 kilometers right away. We have done social media posts on it. So to answer your questions, no, it's going to be a learning process first before any enforcement.
Councillor Shipple, did you have a question?
I do. Under Parks and Grounds, and there was a comment there about removing old trees along Highway 11A. And there's still a couple of old trees there that are crotchety that need removing. So I'm thinking that maybe there is some been removed, but there's still a few more there that need some help. So
I will have to
help
verify
to the
them.
dump is where they need to go. So
There is a new word for your library, crotchety. Mr. Kraus, did you have anything else
Nope.
to highlight?
No.
Okay, so we're just looking then for a motion to accept the department reports. Councillor Musker.
Yes. Thank you. Acting Mayor, I move that we accept agenda item 11.1, department reports for information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Discussion on that motion. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the action list. Mr. Kraus. Very
Thank-
small list.
Yep, thank you, Acting Mayor. So the remuneration policy that is scheduled for June 17th with the consultant and council, and the land use bylaw amendment to be dealt with today, and it will be coming back to council in beginning of July.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? If not, just looking for a motion to accept. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hutchinson is making the motion to accept the action list. All those in favor? And that is carried. And do we have any notice of motion today? Not seeing any notice of motion. We have nothing for closed session, so I will adjourn the meeting at 2:46. Good meeting, everyone. Thank you.